Hello, Poke people, and welcome to Classic Trading Cards. Happy Pokemon Day 2026. The franchise finally reached its 30-year milestone. I think that's pretty special considering how much of a stranglehold it essentially has on pop culture and how ingrained it is in with all of us. I never thought that I'd be opening Pokemon packs with my son, and now that it's reached 30 years, I think that's really something special. So congratulations to them and to all of you. Here is a quick look at the anniversary set that's going to be coming out later this year. It's a celebration style reprint set. You've got all the big hitters in here, some tag team, Mewtwo. So just a couple previews on that. It's going to do well. You're going to want to pick up some of this if you can. Obviously, people are going to be going gangbusters for this set. The cat's kind of out of the bag on anniversary sets, but if you can manage to get a hold of some of this stuff and hang on to it for the next 5 years, I think it's going to do really well considering, you look at celebrations and how good that's doing recently. A year and a half leading up to the next anniversary date is probably going to be some pretty good gains if you can get a hold of some of this stuff. So, and I'm sure it's going to be really fun to rip. Not only did we get that, but we also got a preview of the Gen 10 starters. So we have Brout, the grass type, Pombon, it's like a fire puppy, and Gekwa, the water type. These are pretty cute if you ask me. I hope this set does well. Also wanted to share just a couple things that I picked up recently. I managed to get a PSA 10 Alakazam from the 151 set. Alakazam is my personal favorite Pokemon, so to be able to add this to my personal collection, it's pretty cool. I love this card. I think it's one of the best arts in 151, and that's just going to be something that I don't care whether or not the price goes up and down. Just wanted it for my personal collection. I also bought a small lot from someone who was trying to pay some emergency bills, and they sent me a spreadsheet of all the sealed product that they had. A lot of it was miscellaneous style stuff, but I did cherry pick a couple things. I managed to grab a Hidden Fates tin, the Raichu one. It's got 4 packs in there. Really cool promo. I've never opened Hidden Fates, but from what I understand, it's a very good set, and I didn't hesitate to pick that one up when I saw it. He also had 4 Megazard UPCs, some celebrations, and the Arceus V figure collection box that I grabbed from him. So a relatively small lot, but paid a decent price for it. Paid a little bit more than I wanted to, but we'll get to that. With that, on that topic, actually, I just wanted to kind of highlight some of the mistakes that I've made over the past year and a half. That's what the topic of this video is going to be. In the grand scheme of Pokemon investing, I am essentially brand new to the space. I've only been here for over a year, and compared to some of the other people who have been involved with Pokemon investing for a long time, that's, I'm still a baby essentially. And with that, I've learned quite a few things over the past year and a half that I'd like to share with you guys. I call them mistakes here, but really you could refer to them as like blunders or goofs, because a mistake to me is like something that you had prior knowledge of beforehand and still decided to go ahead and do that. But really, these are just things that I've learned along the way that I wanted to share with you guys. Um, the first one would be paying way too much attention to the market and just over analyzing everything essentially. So, whenever I find a new interest or a hobby or something, I tend to obsess over it. And I'm just constantly inundating myself with information, trying to make up for lost time essentially. And you can really put yourself in a confusing, precarious position if you start doing that. Obviously, you want to get the fundamentals, you want to do some research and immerse yourself in the hobby, but you don't want to be so obsessed with it to the point where you're checking your collector or your shiny app all the time, wondering whether or not a set's going up and down. You want to have a general sentiment of the market of maybe a particular set, but you don't need to, wonder day and night how your investment's doing, especially if you have the fundamentals and you're doing a good job of set picking. You don't need to worry about whether or not the set's going up or down, because at least on this channel and me personally, I'm a long-term investor. That's the type of thing that I'd like to discuss on this channel, and that's just the thing that I'm focused on primarily. Obviously, I still collect and I still enjoy ripping packs with my family now, but as far as what my main focus is, it's going to be kind of less is more, like a simple situation as far as investing goes. I don't need to constantly be watching videos on Pokemon drama or fights in a line at Costco. I'd rather focus on content creators that really get to the meat and bones of their strategies and what they consider to be good sets and why they consider it to be good sets, why they might think a certain thing is undervalued. Or, it's good to keep up on the news, obviously, with the hobby when you can, but you don't need to be checking the prices all the time. You're just going to scare yourself out of positions. You're going to FOMO into stuff that maybe you could have waited on. Uh, if you're really doing a good job of set picking, then you don't need to focus on that, and you can just literally set it and forget it and look back, 5-10 years from there, and all of a sudden now your investment that you basically didn't even think about that much is doing really well compared to maybe your 401k or however the economy is doing at that time. Unless we hit some sort of cataclysmic event and everyone's in their bunkers trading on gold and silver, like Pokemon's not going anywhere, it tends to always go up over time. So just trust your gut, do your best to set pick, and start investing that way instead of listening to all the talking heads in the space and wondering what they're doing. Make your own decision and trust your instinct. Another mistake I was making early on was trying to nickel and dime people, and you really miss out on good purchases and some good investments that way. There's a couple times where me and the seller were just $5-10 off whatever, and I would just say, all right, well, no thanks, or never mind. Like, that's a good way to lose out on exponential gains, essentially, because long term, which is my focus, long term, you're not going to be so worried about that $5 or $10. You're really going to wish you would have just purchased that product to begin with and paid them fair market price, or what they considered to be fair at the time. So gone are the days of me caring about of $2, $5, $10 difference in what we consider to be a fair price. If it's a product that I want and someone local is offering it, even if it's an online purchase and I think it's fair, I'm going to go ahead and buy it. I'm not going to miss out any more than I have to on products that I'm confident will go up and do really well long term. Yeah, you have to trust your instinct when it comes to set picking. And if someone has something that they're willing to get rid of, they may have sat in line for an hour and a half waiting for that product, or they may have sat on something for 5 to 10 years and now they finally want to sell it. So it would behoove you, and it's more of an ideal situation for them to actually give them a fair price, because why can't we all benefit from what happens to be our passion, and why can't we all come out winners in the end? They had the risk, they were risk on for a while, now they'd like to be risk off. Now you are the one that is taking on the risk, and so just give people fair market price. Whenever I'm trying to make a deal face to face or online, I'll generally just be upfront with them and I'll say, okay, I'm a buyer at 80%. Is this number comfortable with you? And if they say no, then depending on the product, I'll increase my offer by 5, 7, 8% and see what they think about that. If they say no again, then a lot of the times I'll end up walking away from a deal, and depending on the product, that's okay. You don't necessarily want to FOMO into every set, but if it's something that it's trending upwards and I would rather have it than miss out, I'm okay with paying 85 87% for something, that's okay. I'm still protected a little bit if there was a downturn, and I'll dollar cost average if I have to. I mean, I believe in Pokemon that much to where I think, you know, 20, 30 years from now, I'm really going to thank myself for having done this, and definitely not going to be worried about the $5 or $10 that we were off on price. Another goof that I've made in the past would be selling too soon. Um, if you are very confident that something's going to do well long term, there's no reason to sell it unless you need to keep the lights on in the house, or you and your family need to eat dinner that week. I would recommend just holding something long term and doing your best not to sell anything unless it's an absolute necessity, or unless you plan on reinvesting in the space into something different. I actually have a horror story when it comes to selling too soon. A little backstory. So, in the late 90s, I was around when Pokemon had first hit the US. It was a craze. I mean, everyone in school, all my friends, everyone I knew almost was collecting Pokemon at the time, or at least was aware of what was going on. Toys R Us was going crazy. There was like essentially meetups every weekend at Toys R Us where people were trading and playing the game. But anyway, my mom was always working. And so I spent a lot of time with my grandparents growing up. Well, my grandpa, God rest his soul, was looking for a way to relate with me at such a young age. And he was always a collector. I mean, he would buy antiques, he would buy oddities, he had various collections and interests of his own. So I think that kind of passed its way down generationally to me. But anyways, he wanted a way to relate to me, and so he started collecting Pokemon as well. I have tons of amazing memories and just a good overall feeling about those times we spent opening packs, and just quality time together, sharing this love of Pokemon. However, being in his early 50s, probably at the time, he was more of a long term minded individual at that point as well. So not only was he collecting Pokemon, but he wanted to master set a lot of the original Pokemon sets. So first edition, base set 2, Jungle Fossil, Team Rocket, all of these things he had kept in binders and managed to master set a lot of the original Pokemon sets. Um, so fast forward to 2017, and at this point, he unfortunately had passed away. I never really cared or even knew if our old Pokemon collection even existed anymore. I didn't know if he ended up selling it at some point, or what have you, but I came across it one day. I was opening totes in our garage, and I found all of his old binders and all of our, my collection as well, a lot of bulk and stuff, but mixed in this pile of master sets and bulk, there happened to be a couple of sealed products, and there's a couple base set packs and a couple theme decks and stuff, but the creme de la creme was a first edition Team Rocket booster box. The seal was great. There wasn't a bunch of dents in it and stuff. It was actually in really good condition. And at that time in my life, I was also, getting heavily involved into music production, another, interest of mine, and I was obsessed with it. It just so happened to have found that Pokemon at the same time, and I'm glad that I did, because it reignited my passion for the hobby. But I thought, you know what, I could sell this Pokemon booster box and invest that into some music production gear. So I think I ended up selling it for around $1,100 on eBay, and then I turned around and bought my music equipment and whatever with it. But if you look at that booster box nowadays, it's $30,000. If I had just had the foresight to hang on to that sealed product and maybe sell a couple of the other, there's hundreds of cards in there. So if I managed to sell a couple of raw cards, or put in put in some overtime at work, I could have easily, saved up enough to get that music equipment. But here I thought selling a sealed booster box at the time was a good idea. I was clearly very naive. I was young. This was 9 years ago, so Um, I was young at the time and very uneducated in the space. I was really excited about finding all of that stuff, obviously, because it brought me back to that time in my childhood and really reminded me of my grandpa, And to be fair, that 1100 sale was probably a 10x or a 5x on what my grandpa had originally invested in that box to begin with. So it's not like it was a bad return, but if you look at it over the course of the next decade almost, I really missed out on some crazy gains. I could have 30K worth of booster box in one product essentially. And I still have a lot of our original collection, so that it's not like, I'm missing out on any sort of gains that way. But and not only that, but I'm also still heavily involved into music production. So it wasn't all for nothing. I did make good use of the money. I invested it into myself, and I'm glad that I did. But that one still irks me. I'll check eBay once in a while and check the prices on some of those booster boxes, those first edition Team Rockets, and I'll just go, damn, I wish I would have held on to that one thing. Um, However, like I said, I still have a lot of our old collection, and I look at my vintage stuff sometimes, and it really reminds me of him, and it reminds me of what it's all about essentially. And now that I'm opening packs with my son and stuff, it's really cool to get to pass that down, and hopefully my son will learn how to take better care of his cards someday. But I'll do my best to teach him that. The last kind of blunder that I wanted to speak on was it's actually a stock market term. It's you can't dance with all the ladies, meaning I forgot who said it. I'm sorry, but it means you can't make all the plays in the world. You can't buy each set. You can't own stock in every single company. There's mutual funds. There's ETFs or index funds rather, and that's kind of what I considered sealed investing in general, is like a long-term growth mindset. But you really want to do your best to set pick instead of trying to buy one of each thing and spread your capital out, 10, 20 different ways. If you're a collector, on the other hand, that might be your goal. And I think that's really cool and essential for people to have goals if they're going to get into this type of thing. But personally, for me, I'm more interested in long term growth than I am having a display piece or, fulfilling some sort of goal as far as collecting one of each. But don't get me wrong, I think that's really cool. And if that's your thing, stick with it, and I wish you luck on getting one of each, or two of each thing. I think that's really cool. But as far as personally, I'm concerned, I'm more focused on trying to decipher which sets are gonna do the best long term and trying to put as much capital as I can into those particular sets. Now that wasn't the way it was when I first started investing into Pokemon. I was just buying everything I could, and if it had the name Pokemon on it, I thought it was just going to do great. I mean, the boom we've had recently, it's pretty crazy. So here I was buying sets that I probably had no business buying just for the sake of buying it, and I managed to accumulate a lot of miscellaneous ancillary products and sets that really don't stand out in the grand scheme of things. So what I ended up doing was I made a market price or a marketplace post where I bundled some stuff together of sets that I didn't think were going to do that great long term, and I just wanted to bundle that together, offload that onto someone else, let them take the risk on that, and then I could justify making a sale because I don't really sell a lot of my Pokemon cards, to be honest, at least not at this point. So I could justify selling some of it if I were to reinvest it into a different set or multiple different sets that I was convinced were going to do better long term. So I did that. I got together like a Battle Styles booster box, Temporal Forces booster box, a bunch of Journey Together 3-pack blisters, some miscellaneous stuff that I had sitting around like tins, and put that all in a bundle, and eventually got offered a fair price for these things. And so I met up with a guy who was actually a shop owner from a couple towns over, and he paid me the $1,500-$1,600 or whatever it was for the product, and I drove from that sale straight to another sale where I was actually the one purchasing a Lost Origins booster box and a prismatic SPC. I think I managed to get them both at around $800, but I could justify selling some of my collection of product that I didn't think was going to perform as well to then reinvest in sets that I was more confident in. And that's kind of what it means to not dance with all the ladies, because instead of diversifying so much across so many different, spaces inside the Pokemon TCG, I thought, why don't I just put more money into the sets, some of the sets that I already have, or some of the sets that I would like to have that, when I look at it in a broad scope, really seem to be just better quality sets. It's not that I think Journey Together isn't a good set. I mean, it's fine. There's some cards in there that I do really like. And it's not that, Sword and Shield, like Battle Styles, isn't going to do well long term. I mean, there's a couple cool cards in there, and you have time on your side when you buy, Sword and Shield or earlier eras. But I could justify it, and I think I made the right decision when it came to that. But in order to have that inventory in the first place, I had to make mistakes of buying just Pokemon for the sake of buying it. And again, if your goal inside of the Pokemon TCG is to be more of a collector and less of an investor, then by all means continue buying, set after set. I think again, that's a really cool display piece, but for me, it's just not the route that I want to go anymore. Like I showed you earlier, I picked up the Alakazam, so I still have a personal collection. I have a binder full of some cool singles that I just like the artwork, and that was really what got me into Pokemon to begin with. Obviously, I liked, playing the Pokemon Red and Blue, Gold, Silver, and Pokemon Snap and all that stuff. I loved watching the show, but really the artwork is what has stuck with me, and just the way these characters get ingrained into your subconscious. It's really fascinating. Um, anyway, I want to keep the video relatively short, so I'm gonna sign off now. If you feel compelled to like, follow, subscribe, any of that good stuff, I'd greatly appreciate it. If not, it's totally cool. We're just gonna kind of get videos out whenever I can. I'm working a lot of hours right now, so in order to find time to do any of this, I really have to set some time aside for myself. And I have a couple days off work, so one of them happened to land on Pokemon Day, and I thought, what a better day to sit down for a little while and make a video sharing some of my information with you guys. I hope you appreciate it, and I hope you have an awesome weekend. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll try and get out another video this weekend and see if we can talk about something else. Anyway, cheers, guys. See you later.